recording. We'll keep the people in. Hello and welcome everyone to FCI Live 2026. We're on our second day, and we are here with Gabby Davis talking about who holds the holder, preventing GM burnout in startup co-ops. She is doing some absolutely fascinating research she's going to talk to you about in just a minute. Real quick, we're going to thank our FCI Live champion sponsors, Frontier Co-op, Cabot Creamery Co-op, and National Co-op Grocers. These three really make it possible for us to do this. It's Cabot's first year as a champion sponsor. Woohoo! And National Co-op Grocers and Frontier have been a consistent large supporter of this series and making it possible. Thank you to all of them. So I'm going to turn over in just a minute here to Gabby. I'm going to stop sharing screen and let her get her slides up. But this is a conversation that if you've been in the food co-op industry for a while, even as a startup organizer, you know everyone's been talking about for a long time, the GM crisis, but also GM burnout. GM burnout is not a new problem. And there's been a lot of conversations about it. And Gabby decided to go directly to the source and talk to people who have lived the experience. And I can't wait to hear what she's going to share with us today. I'm going to turn it over to Gabby. You're muted.
I want to get it in because I got some links to share. So I want to make sure I share it correctly because I can't see. I'm Gabby. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Detroit. Um, is that it? Can y'all see my screen right now? JQ, can you
We're
unmute?
seeing presenter view now. Before it was right. Now we're seeing presenter view.
Right, and I don't see presenter view. It's so interesting.
I know, right?
Oh, tech. I'll try again. I live in Detroit or right outside of Detroit because of the housing market. I got pushed out. Um, I'm on a board at Detroit People's Food Co-op. I work for NCG. We're just gonna go with this, and I'll try to
Yep.
pull up the. I
Okay.
have links to share, and you can see the big view now,
Yeah.
JQ, or still presenter view. Okay,
Nope. Big view.
okay. I have some links to share. I can just share them afterwards in the chat. Other
Cool.
things about me. Um, I have been working in the co-op space since 2022. I've never actually worked at a co-op. I do shop at one. In my work, I also get to travel a lot to different co-ops. And so as of the end of the month, I have made it to 140 co-ops across the country in four years. Alaska is where I'll be next week, which will be interesting, I'm sure. I haven't been there yet to visit a co-op, but I'm happy to be here with y'all today. Here's some community care and housekeeping tips. A version of this shows up on all the presentations I do, some more spicy than others. But it's important that you take care of yourself during this presentation and really any presentation you go to. There's nothing that I have to say or any presenter that has to say that's more important than you taking care of you. And it'll be recorded. So even if you miss something, you'll be able to look back on it um, in the future. And I would say that, holding your pee or poop, you shouldn't do ever. And it's the thing that we do the most as humans. So make sure you take care of yourself. As far as participation, please pop things in the chat. JQ, please interrupt me if there's a question I don't mind being interrupted. If you are unable to type in the chat, raise your hand and you can unmute and say the question that you have to say. Being mindful of the space that we take up together and that you'll be recorded because this is a recording. So you're opting in, you're giving consent to be recorded. We won't be able to remove that from a recording that goes on YouTube and live forever. And then I'll try to leave some time. Hopefully, I'm not too long-winded to where I can leave some time uh, at the end for more questions to be asked. All right, a couple things to know before we start. There are a couple QR codes in here for continued learning. This one leads to the GM survey that it went out a little bit over a month ago. It's 46 questions, and it's if you are a GM, were a GM, or been an interim general manager, or sole leader of a cooperative org or a part of collective management, please fill it out to participate and so we can keep the research going to learn more things about making the GM role more sustainable within a cooperative space. The other thing you'll see is a box like this, and this is when I've had to cover up something that can't be anonymized yet. There's only one box like this. So if you see that box and it looks odd, that's because it's just blocking something that I'm unable to anonymize. Here's the agenda-ish, right? Some things might change. We'll go where the conversation needs to go, especially if there are other needs that need to be, attended to throughout the presentation. So some context, the general manager role is weird. It really doesn't exist. Like the things that they have to do as one person, baffling. And it's been the norm. And I think this became apparent to me because I served general managers and co-ops. And so as I was going out and over the last few years and being able to learn from them and be around them and to listen to all the stuff they had to do and how much I did not ever want to do any of that. Um, it was scary. It was scary for me as a person that's not in that role, but also I ultimately think about sustainability of people with the same fervor as I think about sustainability of the environment. And you'll see, like, during this presentation, outside of this presentation, I work as a therapist, so some of that might come through. And so as I converse with general managers or people that have been general managers and heard all these different stories, watch them navigate doing 1,000 different things with minimal resources, and hearing about people leaving the cooperative space just to be leaving and not necessarily for retirement, it became more and more of a thing. Burnout is real and can cause be the detriment to both GM and the co-op. And I don't think it's a thing we think about. We first think about keeping it opening the co-op and keeping it open. Like how do we open a co-op? And the GM is integral to both, to both opening and staying open. Again, burnout and some of the things that happen in this role has been deemed as normal, and therefore I don't think a lot of attention has been given to the issue because we keep doing it. We continue to move on. We continue to have co-ops to stay open. We continue to see people burn out. But there are, on the same hand, there are people that retire after their 50th year, right? And so something can be said about both parts. Have they gotten used to it and lasted 50 years, or do they have a secret sauce in order to last 50 years, right? And cooperatives are no different from corporate entities in a lot of aspects, especially around hierarchies, right? And so there is a lot of difference, but when it comes to business and hierarchies, they exist even if we never name that it exists. We still have it. There's still a hierarchy. There's still the board, general manager, co-op leadership staff. There's still a hierarchy within that, but sometimes we just push. But we're a cooperative, and sometimes we let the other stuff fall to the wayside, right? And so you'll see that throughout this presentation. There are some preliminary survey results. All of the quotes you see within here have either came from the survey or things I've collected over the last 4 years from general managers, but they are all from real people that have uh, been in this role before. So we'll start first as board preparation. Here's the first quote. I wish you would have talked more honestly about what wasn't built yet. I walked into more ambiguity than I was prepared for. Right? And this came from a new general manager. And to their point, I think the board only knows what it knows. And I think one of the things that we can share is that, hey, we don't know all of these things, right? And that's where we should start. Be honest about what is known and what is unknown with each other. So this is board member to board member. This could also be board member to community. Um, and when people are trying to get a co-op together, you often see a bunch of people that's interested in the community having food. Hopefully, people in that community being interested in the community having food. So you create it with the community versus for the community. But a lot of times, those people who are organized, they have no idea what it's like to run a grocery store. They have no idea around food knowledges or needs around foods. They have their own definition of what should be in the co-op or what people should eat. And they have no experience on the board. There's nothing wrong with those things, but you have to name that you don't know these things too. You can't come in as a board member and be an expert in grocery and you've done nothing in the grocery store but shop before. We have to be honest with ourselves. Create a communication system in advance of the GM to know what access looks like with the board. And so, using DPFC as a example, we have a liaison that talks back and forth with our GM or our interim general manager right now. So it's not 9 people. reaching out to the general. It shouldn't be. Let me go back. It shouldn't be 9 different people reaching out to the general manager with either requests or directives. You want to make sure that we are not adding any additional burden to the general manager as far as meeting or supervisory skills as well, supervisory reporting as well. Excuse me. We have to align internally based on our knowledge versus our feelings. Again, it's great to join a co-op out the kindness of your heart or because you just retired and you want to give back, but that doesn't make you an expert, right? And so it's okay for board members too to ask for help and say we don't know these things because these are the same things we want our general manager to be able to come to the board for, right? And then defining what the GM owns and what the board retains. And this may change after opening. JQ did a fabulous presentation, and the whole FCI team around phase 5. And I think, boy, do I wish we had some of those things prior, like some of that knowledge a while back, right? Like knowing, oh, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go. Knowing that before we open our co-op, thinking about, DPFC, because we end up doing a lot of work after the fact that nobody was prepared to do. Right. So sometimes that apparently it's not new. It was not a new thing, but we leaned on people after the fact that had more experience than us. And we learned that, oh, it's not uncommon for somebody being on a board that happens to work in marketing that can do all the marketing role for a full year for free. Oh, there is a person that can help do these things for free because co-ops only grow based on what they can afford. You only grow employees based on what you can afford to do. And so all those jobs are split up amongst either paid employees or the board, right? And so knowing that a little bit even, or even having some type of idea before you hire a GM is integral because then you can be honest with that GM when you do hire. This is a portion that was taken from the survey. And the question was, did you have clear understanding of GM expectations? With and it was 1 to 5, 5 being no. Okay. And so most of the people so far, and this was taken, I think I was at number 15 or 14 as far as participants, but most of the folks not being clear on expectations. Some of the comments were like, I don't think the board was clear on expectations either. It's a very common thing. But again, if you're able to know that and name that, and then give them that information, that means you were honest and they still chose to take on this role with the honesty that you gave them about what you knew as a board. Sometimes it felt like I was being evaluated by people who didn't fully understand or attempt to understand what it took to do the job day to day. Right. And again, this is when we come in, we are supervising and governing a person in a job that we've never had before. And so this is when it points back at the board, what education are we doing? How can we make ourselves better? And there are tons of classes and resources. There are people researching new resources to be created to support boards, but sometimes you might have to go, outside of the cooperative space to learn some things about governance, to learn some things about finance. I know I did. I'm the treasurer and I had never been a treasurer before. So I'm like, well, I know how to take care of my money, but how do I help with somebody else's money, especially money that's an amount I've never experienced before? Right. So it does involve a lot of work. It's not a board that's going to be sedentary, especially if you are a startup. Post hire, still be honest about what is unknown, right? Let the general manager know or leadership staff that we don't have these systems together. We don't have these processes together, and we don't know about this, this, and this. What are some ways that we can do? What are ways we can collaborate to work on this together? Do you have any contacts within the grocery space that can help us with that? Here's a timeline. Is this timeline realistic? Right? So having these honest conversations and modeling vulnerability early on, because that will set the stage for creating psychological safety for the general manager and create a space where they can come back and say like, hey, I don't know about this. I don't have knowledge about this. Can you provide me knowledge about this? Who can I contact? What are my resources? Attempt to minimize meetings, and I say that both from experience uh, being on a board at a co-op, but also supporting GMs and co-ops. Is this a meeting or an email? They only have so many hours in a day, especially in a startup co-op. You're managing a lot of things, right? And so any meetings that you can minimize that you can take, like maybe this is not a general manager thing, and include them in that conversation. Like, do you think this is a meeting that you need to go to? Or are you just invited to it because you're currently leading a co-op? Is this related to leadership of the co-op? Maintaining availability to the community is not up to the general manager and staff to ensure that people come in only. It's not only up to the general manager to make people come to the store. It doesn't matter how many specialists you get from grocery store consultants to reset your store, to reshelve things. Nobody's going to know if they're not already in the store, already coming in the store, right? So it's not just up to staff to get people to come to the store. It's not just marketing. The board has to participate in community engagement. If the staff is or the co-op is putting on an event, the board can be there to run the event. The board can be there to table, right? They don't have staff. Most startup co-ops do not open up with somebody in community engagement. Most people don't open up with a full-time marketing person whose only job is actually marketing, right? And so we have to step in and do some of those things as well. And the other thing is, I put in here hugging elders and kissing babies. If you are opening in a space in an area that's experiencing food apartheid to get that first grocery store, and you are in the media, in the news, people are coming in to meet you if you are the general manager. That takes up a lot of time, right? And you can't say, no, I'm busy because everybody's excited. So how can you help manage that? How can you stand in the space instead of the GM to do those things or to talk to the community about like, hey, give them some space. We just open and we still have, a job to do. Involve the GM if possible in hiring their staff. Let them have input versus hiring all the staff, then hiring the GM whenever possible. We know sometimes that you might be up against a wall as far as getting folks hired, maybe it's due to grants or funding, but whenever possible, include the GM in the hiring process. It's imperative that they have some type of idea of who is coming in, how they'll fit together, any additional work they might have to do to support the staff member, right? And letting them participate, it creates psychological safety or helps to create psychological safety for the general manager, but also it starts that process for any new staff because they start off with a relationship because this person was involved. And investigate and minimize urgency whenever possible. We know that urgency is both the symptom and byproduct of white supremacy. Is the milk going to spoil? Are these things really urgent? Like you really have to interrogate how we're using urgency. Is it a right now? And my background is in healthcare. So when I think about urgency, I'm literally thinking about life or death. And so not many things are urgent to be honest. But a lot of things are urgent just because it's always have been. Because America is a country of urgency. It has to be done yesterday. And so we have to make sure we continue to interrogate those things and if we are like that, we shouldn't burden our GM and have those same expectations. The last thing you want to do is burden the GM for a document when you know you only check your co-op emails on Wednesday. You know you're only checking them once a week. Why are we pushing to have a document that we're not going to even look at for 4 more days? And we should have to discuss burnout early on. Early on, and I would say the board should be discussing it with each other anyway, because boards burn out too. And hopefully I'll get to that if I'm not too long-winded. The question in the survey read, if a GM has experienced burnout symptoms during their tenure as GM, and 80% reported yes. Right. The green box is because in the survey I let them add in their own options, and that was one they added, and I'm like, oh, maybe not. That might give it away. Who wrote it? So I kind of left it out. But 80% said yes, they had experienced burnout symptoms. Some of the comments also stated that they were afraid to share about their symptoms of burnout for having fear of being looked at as, I can't handle things that's happening. I'm not up to the job. I'm not good for leadership. The co-op needed a leader, but it also needed a system. I was asked to be both without being asked to be both. There is no one person that has all the skills necessary to be a general manager in every community, because every community is different. What we need in Detroit will not be the same thing that they need in Alaska. I guarantee it. Right. What a co-op in the city needs is very different from what a co-op in the rural area needs. So either way, it'll be a learning curve. I would say the bigger red flag, and some of the GMs actually named this in some of their comments, is a person that comes in and knows everything and doesn't need help, which happens all the time. They did really well in the interview, did they? Well, there are classes for interviews, but we have to be open to like they might not have it all, and we might have to provide resources so they can get the things that we need, that our co-op needs. The thing was covering it. Being clear about relationships and boundaries post hire between staff and board. Have a policy in place about when the staff is supposed to reach out to the board, especially if you don't have HR. Most startup co-ops don't open up with HR because again, you need money in order to hire more positions. So make sure if possible, you can have these clear boundaries about when you should reach out to the board and when the board should reach out to the staff. Most co-ops, if they have them, will share them with you. So if there is a co-op that's open, please reach out. Like that's the one thing I like about co-ops versus any of the other places I worked for or any other orgs I work for, is they will give you things for free. They want you to be successful, even if it's not them. Create environments where asking for help is celebrated, right? No rolled eyes, no like here we go again for a general manager asking for help. I mean, you don't know the answer either because you aren't a grocery expert. Or you have to create a space where somebody can ask for help and then you go find it if you don't have it. Avoid a definitive language that labels GM as a hero. I've been guilty of this before and I've seen it so many times like, oh, you're just the person I needed. What would the community do without you? The community will survive. The community will survive and the co-op won't close. But it's important that you do that because that can also be burdensome to a person. They might not share about their needs because they've been viewed as a hero and it feels really good. Feels really good. Take on roles within the co-op that you have the capacity and experience to take on. Recently at my co-op, I was running payroll briefly. I didn't have the experience to do it, but I had a little bit of capacity. And how I got support for that is I reached out to somebody at another co-op, like, hey, can you help me teach me how to do payroll? And I got a yes. There was no argument about it. It was like, yeah, we can meet on Tuesdays at 9. And you figured it out. And then I ran out of capacity. Right. And so make sure if you can do it, you can do it. Never agree to it's like, oh, I can do this and I can be at the co-op every Wednesday from 1 to 4 to greet people when you know that your grandkids are coming for the summer. And you agreed to do this in April. So we have to think about that. Even though this for most co-ops, you are a volunteer board member, think about what your actual capacity is, especially if you are a startup. And if you don't have capacity, what can you do to encourage others to run for the board? All right. Are you just taking up a space because you want to be on the board or because you want to do something for the board? Oh, there you go. Encourage folks to run for the board that have the skills to support versus just a supporter. Do not attach the success of the co-op solely on the GM. So many comments within the survey talked about feeling like it has to be up to them. Like they were told it's up to them if the co-op fails or is a success. Again, not true. Co-op has never only involved one person, right? A lot of co-ops talk about the need for members and the need for customers, and that's true, but you also can't run a co-op without staff, right? One group isn't more important than the other group. And then create, share, and update boundaries as necessary, and even make it mandatory, especially for the GM with the board and the GM with staff. What does that look like? As a leader, I was responsible for everything. They didn't have boundaries, and neither did I. It was support and trust that was missing, and that is what made everything so difficult. Right. And I mean, at the beginning of a relationship, you're trying to build support and trust, right? And usually, trust is the outcome of support when relationships, first come together. Now we're gonna talk about boundaries a little bit. Any questions before I move to the next section?
A lot of people seconding things, but no questions in the chat
I
so
do
far.
have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Angela.
My question is, who does the GM go to if they have a grievance or they need support because the board is their boss, right? I mean,
Right. Mhm. If the GM needs support, they should go to the board. If there's a grievance against the board, it can't be for support. Like if the GM has been harmed, whether that's physical, sexual, verbal. Usually co-ops that don't have HR hire a outside HR consultant for investigation. JQ, do you want to add to that? That's correct?
Yep,
If
no,
there's a
that's correct. You
Yeah,
should be able to go to the board for support if you're having concerns with specific board members and mistreatment, and they aren't on like the exec. You can go to the exec, and worst come, and usually they will engage somebody external then to support through that, and that's what they should be doing. But of course, if you don't have a healthy board, there is no way to make them do that.
yeah. Thanks, Dr. Angela. It was hard to create boundaries or lead when the co-op still felt deeply embedded in day-to-day operations after more than 2 years. Right? So you can't expect to get to a point where the general manager can trust the board and the board can trust the general manager if the general manager is still being puppeted by the board, especially a board with no co-op grocery experience or no grocery experience, right? We've seen this with, I've been in a co-op before when there's been multiple calls back to back from different board members asking about things that was absolutely unnecessary to be asked. There has been stories of people being watched on video camera from afar from a founder or somebody on the board, and then calling to ask questions based on what they see on video camera. You can't expect somebody to thrive in a position and help the co-op thrive if they're being treated as such. So creating and sharing boundaries, and I'll leave this up here for y'all to read through, but I will say the one thing that we miss most about boundaries, and I'm gonna share some, there should be a link after this. I can't remember because I can't see the next slide, but one of the things that we do really bad with boundaries is we expect other people to know them before we share them. It's like, well, they should know that. Why would they know that? Right? People are dynamic and we get to change. And so a boundary that I would assume somebody have, they might not have that, right? Or maybe I knew what their boundary was before, but it's changed. And so it's important for us to interrogate what our boundaries are if we're on the board, if we're a general manager, share with the people who they'll impact, and then hold people to the consequences of them, right? One boundary I encourage general managers and boards to have is, for instance, general manager. I will not answer calls on my personal device from board members after 6 p.m. and on the weekends unless it's an emergency. And then you have to talk about what's an emergency, which is a whole nother thing. Because there's an expectation that this job is 24/7. Even though it might be salary, it still doesn't mean you get access. These are humans too. And they have families just like everybody else has. I was accessible all the time and it slowly became expected. And so this is when there was a boundary, it was never shared and it became an expectation. And so that meant for this person, and it was a longer story that they shared, that when they stopped answering the phone on the weekends, then people start calling. There was one general manager who somebody did a welfare check on them because they wouldn't answer the phone for somebody on the board for a weekend. They sent the police to their house to do a welfare check. And they didn't want anything. They was asking about because their bread was out. When was the bread going to be back? Their specific type of bread was out, and they wanted to know when it would be back. These are things that happen all the time. Uh-oh. How did that happen? And then there are some differences. This QR code leads to a video that makes these things a lot easier. This is something that I would play for your board or for your general manager. It's from Dr. Raquel Martin that talks about the difference between boundaries, rules, expectations, and standards. And so boundaries, again, we talked about boundaries. Rules are something that's required. You have to make sure you turn the licensing information in by this day. For startup co-ops, you have to get in the EBT and WIC by this date because you want to have that before the co-op opens, whenever possible. It's a lot easier if it's there, so these are some rules. Expectations, we discussed that. And standards are, what you allow what's allowed at your co-op. But this video leads to more, but I was going to play it, but it's going to take up too much time. It's about 2 minutes. And it's a really good resource and it's free. Another resource that I encourage folks to get is a book by Nedra Glover Tawwab. She is a social worker that talks about relationship. This book, every time I read it a couple times. Um, it felt like she was cussing me out specifically. It was so honest about boundaries and basically how bad we are at them, but how you can be better. The other thing she has is a uh, workbook to go along with that. And these are readable. They're not too academic. So I've done these, for instance, with some consulting clients using the workbook, talking about boundaries is pretty easy. I'll find it and share it, Dr. Angela. It's also, if you don't have it is a TikTok, but it's also on Facebook and Instagram as well. Dr. Martin likes to put out things that are accessible to most people without a paywall. So, and then the food co-op ecosystem. Um, this is something important to learn. I think we view ecosystem, and you might have heard it through some of the FCI lives that have already been shared. But I want to talk about the co-op ecosystem through the eyes of a general manager. And so this is just a system of people, roles, relationships, or everybody that has something to do with the co-op, or somehow works together to help it sustain and be successful. But the GM, however, that's the board, of course, the co-op leadership staff, the rest of the staff, members and shoppers. Again, we talk about members all the time, but shoppers is what keep the store open. Not all members are shoppers. Some people are members because of vibes. Like, yes, this is for the community, and I'm going to join. Right? Funders, co-op membership organizations. This would be like NCG, Infra, any other orgs that serve food co-ops. Vendors, neighbors, any community partners, people you partner with that's related to or not related to revenue or grant funding. Founders, even if they're not on the board, maybe they don't even shop there or live in the same state, they still might have their 2 cents. And sometimes the GM is beholden to that. State agencies, these are the people you get your licensing from around selling food, liquor, kitchens, federal agencies when we talk about funding, public agencies, and the court system. And so I was recently at a co-op, and the person I was meeting with was late because they had to go to court over a case involving theft over time by a member. So they were in court. So you still have to deal with all these things. And sometimes you have to do that in order to get somebody banned in certain cities or states. And supply chain change organizations like KHE, SuperValue, UNFI, things like that. And so the GM is beholden to all these people. And so it's not just like I have to run a grocery store, but I have to also keep up relationships and keep in contact with all of these people in addition to what I have to do just as my role. Right. So this is a lot of calendar space and a lot of brain space to hold. So anytime the board or other community members that participate via communities or councils, depending on how your makeup is, it's important that you get into place or ask the general manager, like, hey, what things can we take on? Right. Or you get money like, hey, how can we hire to help with some of these things? Because if not, this is one person navigating all these systems. A lot of my job wasn't visible. It was managing relationships, emotions, and expectations that never made it onto a task list. And a lot of these things just pop up. I remember one of the first co-ops I went to was People's Food Co-op in Kalamazoo. Oh, and that was when Chris Dilly was there. I don't know if he's on right now, but Chris Dilly was there, and I was talking to him, admiring his ponytail, of course. And there was a guy that came up, and he came up to Chris, and he was like, "Hey, nobody turned it on today, or nobody flipped the switch." I'm like, "Man, what is going on?" Like I don't know what's going on. And Chris was like, "Oh, okay, I'll take care of it for you." And the guy kind of left out, and I'm like, "Chris, what's that?" He was like, "Hold on, just walk with me. We can keep talking, but I need to go turn this on." And so, People's Food Co-op in Kalamazoo at that time, and I don't know if they still do, they had electricity ran to the outside, so people experiencing homelessness could charge their devices during the day, and nobody had flipped a switch for those things to work to. So I'm thinking about like all these other things they have to do, and this is what I mean by like you are beholden to your neighbors as well, right? So you have all these things to manage as one individual, and sometimes delegation is important too. But if you just open or if you're a small co-op, you might be the person that you're delegating to. Right? The GM might be the person that we delegate to. So just keeping in contact because all of this plays into burnout and why it can happen so swift. And it can be a shock sometimes to people that's not working in that role. Everything felt urgent because everything mattered to someone, and I was on the end holding it all. Again, like as I mentioned before, it's one person. You got to remember all of that stuff, and it gets better. It's interesting going from small co-ops. And I mean, small is in revenue or small is in size that haven't been around long, startups. And then you get to the larger co-ops, they have a lot more resources. They have a department for there. Somebody can delegate that. And of course, it kind of gets easier, but you have to get to that point. And so for a lot of co-ops, that might not be the goal. We wanted to say small and community and, and not grow so much. Like we wanted, co-ops are meant to put back into the community. And so, being bigger or having additional stores may not be a goal, but it's still only one person. I wasn't just making decisions, I was constantly balancing who those decisions would impact and who might push back. Right. I didn't ask this question in the survey, but as I had more and more conversations with general managers, they talked about the day before and the day of the board meeting being one of the most stressful days because now they have to manage the perceived needs of a group of people as one group, but also as separate individuals who might just have an interest in this one thing. And so they might ask questions on and on about this one thing they're just curious about versus it being business of the board or of the meeting. Then recognizing and preventing burnout. Where am I? Some of the root causes of GM burnout, of course, I put the roots there anytime I get a chance. Decision fatigue. Now, the general manager has to make a lot of decisions without the board, and they should make them without the board, but it's still on one person. So it still can be heavy to be the last person to make a decision, especially if that decision didn't pan out, right? And so having that open door of like, what happens if I make a mistake? What will happen with my integrity? Will I be looked at differently? Will I be less trusted by staff and shoppers and members and the board? What will happen on my review? Will I get a raise? Like all those things come into play. Capitalism and white supremacy, because we're navigating all of, the same things I mentioned before, that we need to make more money in order to hire more employees to take some of the work off the general manager. And that means you have to navigate capitalism in order to work against it, right? You still need to make money. Community demands with limited resources. As we stated before, or I didn't state this before, but I'm just thinking back to in November when there was a likelihood of SNAP being cut, and SNAP had been paused for a lot of people. There was no push from Walmart and Target to figure out a way to help the people that would no longer be able to use SNAP, even if it was just a short term. The co-ops were. The co-ops are navigating and coming together and figuring out a way to get people food and to be able to give discounts in the absence of SNAP, to donate more to a food pantry, to get people. They figured out a way to do those things, right? We saw in another thing with community demands and limited resources when they first started being televised around Minnesota and ICE. Those Minnesota co-ops got together. Walmart didn't get together to figure out a way to support communities. Walmart didn't close in solidarity. Those are the co-ops with less resources, less staff, and less money with, doing those things in order to support betterment for the staff overall. So just keep those in mind. It's more community demands and limited resources. Also, thinking about community demands, it's more likely that somebody will protest something that happens at a co-op than it will Walmart because they feel like they have access, right? And that impact is a lot different. The audacity of the board, staff, and members. I talked a lot about the audacity with the board, but staff and members have a lot of it too. Like they feel like, especially when we talk about ownership, and some communities aren't well versed in what it means to be a member or an owner, but feel like you have to do staff has to do what you say, right? And because it's a cooperative and it's not supposed to be like a corporation at all, that some of the staff can have more chances than they normally would to be out of pocket to be disrespectful, to do certain things, right? More chances are given. Ambivalence regarding rest. And there might be some general managers on here I've worked with before, but one of the questions I ask them all the time, every time I see them, like, when was the last time you had a vacation? How many hours did you work this week? And I would say it's probably less than 10 people that I know of the general managers I've asked this before that work 50 hours or less. It would not be shocking for me to hear I worked 70 hours this week. And then it's followed with, well, it's less than last week, right? And so this idea of like what happens when I rest. Guilt and choosing self. I see that some of the meetings I get to go to where they've chosen to come to a co-op related meeting, but really they're working the whole time they're there. I'm like, oh, I never should have came. I should have stayed with the co-op. They need me. There was one time I was at a conference. It was in 2022, and it was right after the massacre at Tops Market in Buffalo. And one of the first people I got close to there was somebody who used to work at Tops Market. The meeting that I was at, the meeting that we were at together, was 3 days after the massacre happened, and they had so much guilt, even though it was nothing they could do there, for still coming to this conference that was out of town. Right. And so we have, general managers and leadership staff overall, and board too, can have a lot of angst about choosing yourself or prioritizing rest when you get a chance to. The absence of boundaries, you're not used to them, or maybe you were really good at boundaries, but now the pull and the excitement. I know when DPFC was, open, I was really excited. Like, what else can I do? I was there day one with no experience in grocery, just standing around trying to help, bag and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm like, let me give my whole day. I didn't have that time the whole day, but it felt really good to do it. But sometimes that can get us in trouble. And then having a board with no boundaries either. And that means a board with no boundaries with each other and with their general manager and staff. And then in Black and Brown communities, specifically racism and misogyny, that comes up all the time. And I won't belabor that point because really it's another presentation. Here's some early signs of burnout: constant urgency. We touched on that a little bit. I have to get this done. This has to get done right now, without ever interrogating why that is. Some things are urgent, but not as often as you think. Somebody's having difficulty prioritizing the things that are more important versus the things that are less important. Working beyond capacity regularly, feeling like everything depends on you or them. There was no off switch. Even when I wasn't working, I was thinking about what I forgot or what was falling behind. And I talk about this in a different presentation about psychological safety, but there's this thing called Case of the Mondays, which won't happen in the co-op because there's no weekends off. Like this, it's rare you find a general manager that never picks up their phone. But let's just say you work Monday through Friday, and when you got off Friday, it's probably the evening. You were really tired, you went to bed, you woke up Saturday and like, man, I had a rough week. I'm exhausted and all these things happen. This is all on Saturday. Sunday, you're like, man, I gotta go to work tomorrow. So now you never really were off because Saturday you think about the prior week and Sunday you think about the next week. Right? All these things I have to do, or what did I miss? So how can you really take time? Some deeper signs of burnout: emotional exhaustion, disconnection from the community, frustration or resentment, and loss of clarity or confidence. And confidence could be in their role, but also in the co-op or in the board, right? All three can be a detriment to the sustainability of the co-op and the general manager. When I started slowing down, it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I couldn't keep going at that pace. I've talked to many general managers that's been hospitalized before, likely from exhaustion, right? And I said, what happened when you were hospitalized? Did the co-op close? No, it won't close. It'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way. It won't be perfect, but it's fine. But you have to take care of your body. Your body will sit you down at the absolute worst times if you don't sit it down first. And for the board, it's up to board members to encourage people to take their vacations, to not save up all their, vacation time. Encourage and sometimes force vacations. And then burnt out board can lead to burnt out GMs. right? And I would say startup boards are probably exhausted. We've seen there was a co-op recently last year that opened that 90% of the board left as soon as they opened. So the board did all of that work for them to get open, and then they left. It wasn't because their terms were over either. And then you had a whole new set come in. That can also be detrimental to a general manager because now they have to gain the trust of a new set of people. Not saying that every board should retain every member because some people need to go and some people need to retire to create space for other people. But just know that if the board is burnt out, the general manager will be burnt out because of it. I didn't realize I was burnt out because everything around me said this was just what it takes. Is burnout normal in co-ops, Gabby? Am I tripping? That was a quote within the survey. And you see this generationally too. I know when I talk to my parents and some of the elders in my community about burnout, they just think like, really, whatever, y'all just lazy. Just work hard and just do these things. And it wasn't until in 2019 I had a conversation with I was in DC for some work and I had a conversation with John Lewis before he passed. And one of the things he said, he was like, "This is the movement, but this is not the civil rights movement. Like you need to take care of yourself in order to keep the movement going." That's not it verbatim. I have it verbatim. But you have to take care of yourself in order to keep the movement going. The co-op will survive uh, without the general manager or with the general manager taking some time off or with board members rolling over and having new people come in or taking a break and coming back or whatever the case may be. Some takeaways. Yes. Okay, I'm having a few minutes of questioning. Main takeaways. Talk about expectations, boundaries, rules, and standards early and often, and update them and recreate them as necessary. Right? Mine change all the time. As on my in my role at any job, but also my current role on the board. My boundaries change all the time. I definitely look at my email twice a week now. Like I've shared boundaries with certain people. Like if you need me to look at my email, send me a text message. Otherwise, I'll look at it when the day I'm gonna look at it. Right. And so I've shared that. Like here are the things I need. There's no more email on my phone. No, I can't access none of the other systems I need to access normally on my phone. I have to be by my computer, which I also try not to be by unless I absolutely have to on those same days I check my email. Right. So it's important for us to, as board members, I'm saying that, and important for us to have boundaries. And so the general manager can follow suit. The ecosystem could work for and against the GM and co-op success. So the board and other folks have a role in trying to manage that ecosystem as well. The board's duty in education must go beyond governing a co-op and supervising the person. I don't think I didn't put this in there, but please learn about psychological safety in order to support your uh, general manager. Talking about burnout during the interview and check in often, I would even say craft a question about burnout. They might not have a perfect answer because maybe they have never been asked about burnout before. Maybe it's been normalized. But I will bring it up in the interview too to let them know that it's important, that the board thinks it's important for them to be able to name burnout or mitigate it before it happens. No, I did say something. And practice and model psychological safety. There are a bunch of really cool resources or free resources out there. JQ, did I record something about psychological safety with FCI? I can't
No,
remember.
you have not with us.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. But there are some really cool resources out there around psychological safety. Some of them might not be specific to co-ops, but it's integral to the sustainability of the co-op general manager, the board, and the staff. All right. Naming burnout with actuals. So sometimes like it's just burnout, or is it chronic misalignment between the board and the GM, or the staff and the GM? Are expectations unclear? Yes, they normally are because it's a co-op. But we can talk about how do we clear these expectations up? How do you create a space safe enough where somebody can come in and ask the question? Expectation updates without updating who they impact. So, like if you have an expectation that the general manager is always in the store from on Wednesdays from 9 to 12, and you just happen to be in there and they weren't there, and that was the expectation, maybe you should share that. You should share the thing you came up with. Sustained pressure without release, like, oh, this is just a rough patch, and even minimize whatever that pressure is. Like, sorry, it's just a rough patch. We'll get through it. We need to say it's bad. So sometimes we participate in toxic positivity too long. That's when we always talk about the good stuff, or we talk about the silver lining versus naming what it is. I think the grocery sector and um, healthcare, I always put those two together, know a lot about this because we experienced COVID. And so there's a lot of like, look what you did, look how resilient you are. That's one thing, but can we talk about how we got there? How do we move around it? And can we just acknowledge that it was hard? Responsibility without shared support. So again, this goes back to having these expectations and rules for somebody, and they don't have any support to meet those expectations and rules. Time management, that's a thing that might change if you, especially if you came from a corporate space or corporate grocery to co-op grocery. Time management changes a lot, and you might have to support your general manager in getting education themselves about it, or just reimagining what that looks like. And then fear of board delegation. I see this come up all the time when the co-op is having an event and the co-op or one person is running around doing everything for the event while the board is there sitting waiting to participate, and it's for the community. And then this is the last thing. I just wanted to share a quote for me that I share with when I bully general managers about taking a break. Burnout doesn't come from caring too much. It comes from caring too much for too long. All right. So if you're a general manager on this call, please take care of yourself in whatever way that looks like. And if you're not, if you are within the cooperative space and are yearning to open a co-op, or you are supporting those opening a co-op, please remind them of this because they are just as important to the sustainability of the co-op as our members, staff, and the community. Any questions? This QR code leads to that survey again. So if you are a GM on the call and you want to add to the conversation, please um, please do so. And let me see if I can exit. Uh-oh.
We'll also have the link to the survey and FCI's next e-news, which comes out next week. So if you miss it, look for that e-news. We're gonna have a whole piece on it in our e-news in the link.
I'm gonna stop sharing and I can drop those other links uh in the chat. Can you still see my
Hmm. We're
oh
not
there we
seeing your
go.
we're not seeing your
Okay.
PowerPoint anymore. No, we're just seeing you.
Okay, I'll drop the links to the book and to the other thing. Any questions I can
There was a
answer so far?
question. I jumped in on it, but if you have any thoughts on it, is it ever do GMs does GM role ever shared in co-ops?
There are co-ops with collective management. I'm sure somebody probably already responded to that.
I talked about
Oh yeah,
people's. Hmm.
yeah, that's the only one I know. And sometimes when general managers roll out, especially if it's unexpected, some of the boards might opt into having a group of people manage or take, peel apart the job that general manager was holding while they search for a new one. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
It's an adventure.
A lot of people say, "Well, it doesn't always work." I'm like, neither do single GMs.
Yeah.
I didn't see any. If I missed a question, anybody, please let me know. And please, if you have any more questions, you can throw them in the chat. I think you've got GMs in the room who would be happy to jump in and just start preaching and thanking you. But
Yeah. If there are general managers that have something to share about burnout, we still got 6 minutes. I haven't been a general manager, so all the things I learned a lot about burnout through my experience as a therapist, but everything else is coming from my interactions with GM. So this was created by them for real.
can I throw in a quick thought? I do want to say
Yeah.
that boards, a lot of you, what I heard one board say to a GM, and this resonated deeply with me. I used to be a GM of a startup, was she told them they couldn't keep texting her at 2 a.m. I said, set a boundary. They cannot do that. And when she tried to do that, the board member, she texted me, the response was, well, we do. Like I'm up at 2 a.m. worrying about the club. We've done it for years and you're getting paid. I was like, oh, holy crud.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to examine, like, I'm so glad you brought it up. Boards need to examine their own burnout because remember, resentment is advanced burnout. And it
Mhm.
came, and I've seen it come out directly at the gym repeatedly. You're getting paid to do what I've put up with for years. So you should just take it.
I think too, some of the other things I've heard from general managers is this expectation of thanks from the general manager to the board for doing the job that they weren't hired to do. So I'm like, we've done all this work. Okay, you opted into it. We have cookies for everybody. Like we can't do that. It's not, just because you decided to organize and build a co-op and you hired somebody, whose fault is that? You did it. Yeah, you should have been doing it for the community's sake, right? And not just because you wanted kudos from the person that you hired. Are there any general managers
I
that
saw
want to?
Janiqua unmuting.
Oh,
Janiqua,
go ahead, sis. Oh, and we got Tyler is here too. Yeah.
Listen, all I'm going to say is everything is valid. Thank you so much. I think sometimes I feel like I'm on an island out here by myself with these feelings, and just to know that there are others feeling the same, but also to bring light to it from a GM perspective. Because a lot of times, we hear from boards, what they need from the GM, but hearing what GMs go through can help better shape the model, and help us be better of stewards of these cooperatives. And so just thank you, Gab. You know what I mean? Just thank you for what you're doing and bringing light to the situation. As a GM, I'm telling you right now, like all of what she's saying is valid. So again, much love. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sis.
Yeah, I agree with everything Janiqua said. And I'm so grateful, Gabby, for the survey. Filling that out was very powerful just to have someone ask these questions. I was like, thank you for asking, navigating the relationship with a toxic board or toxic board members is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to do for all the reasons you talked about. Like, this is a volunteer position. No one asked you to do this. Board member, you are not the co-general manager.
Yeah.
You are not a consultant we hired to find us real estate, or so it's just really hard when those are the people you report to.
Yeah. I would say thanks for sharing that, Tyler, too. That I was at one co-op and it was right before it opened, and there was a portion. I was meeting with staff, and there was a presentation from the board, and a board member came in, and she said, "Well, I'm the reason all of this exists. I started all of this." I was like, "Oh, child." Like you're telling that to staff. I'm like, not. And then they moved. They moved like a month later out the state, just to be clear. But like, why was that something that needed to be shared? And if it's a co-op, was it created by one person? Was it created about one person? So it's important too. And I think too, I didn't mention this in here, is that all co-ops aren't started for the same way or for the same reason, right? And so especially if you're moving, when you see like one co-op move, I mean a person that was a member at one co-op, and once they move to a different co-op and ask when did the buying club start? We don't know. What's a buying club? Everybody don't start the same. It wasn't always Rochdale. I think Alana presented about that. Some of the history about cooperation. Like sometimes we just started because it needs to be started. Yeah. Anybody else? I could stay on a few extra minutes too,
I
JQ.
just want to. I just want to also add on there too, Gab. Like
Mhm.
all of the things you're mentioning is not to mention if you hire your GM early. If you are not fully developed, if you don't have all of the anecdotes in place, the systems, the policies, all of those things, and you hire your GM on early, you're asking them to take on more tasks without asking them. And so I just want to put that on the table as well.
Yeah, being honest. Like say, like we don't have this, and this, and we want you to create it. And then looking at the coin that you offer too. Look at that, what the dollar sign saying. Are you looking for a general manager or project manager or both? Are you looking for that to be and Janico, I think you work as both, if I'm not mistaken. No, general manager and project manager, but it's no certain way. Like some of the people that reach out like outside of my role at NCG asking about co-op things, they want to know about like, well, send me just a job description. I'm like, they exist, but they don't. It's gonna be different no matter where you are. I can guarantee some of the things that Detroit People Food Co-op had to do before we opened is very different than the co-op that's going to open in Utah will be. It's not wrong, it's just different. Like some of the things that Tyler experienced in Pittsburgh is not going to be the same thing that Janiqua experienced in North Carolina. The needs are going to be different. Any other offerings from folks? Your voice is welcome here.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm from Uproot Market and Eatery in Battle Creek.
Thanks again.
Another GM.
Yeah.
Just want to repeat what Janiqua and Tyler said. Thank you for this. Thank you for the questions. I didn't get a chance to take the survey before the call, but I'm gonna do that now. And like Tyler said, yes, just seeing the questions, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like someone does see me, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And thank you for spending a little bit of time on founders too. In my experience, my board is not so much the challenge. It is my founders
Mhm.
um, that want to have a really big say, and it's a challenging balance. So just
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for everything.
You're welcome. And your board should be helping with that. Your board should help with that. I gotta
My
make it up to
board should
Battle
be
Creek
doing
too.
so much more than they are doing right now, and we're
You are
working on
being
it.
recorded,
You're
Stacy.
being
You be
recorded.
okay. uh, and I would say too, I gotta make it up to Battle Creek. That's a train ride or a drive away. I need. I want to take
Yeah.
you. I follow y'all on Instagram. Uh, on my co-op Instagram page. I
Our
share all
Instagram
my fun.
needs work. Follow us on
Yeah.
Facebook. That's a lot
Okay.
more active, but you know, like you said, it's all on me right now. So.
Yeah. And I drop my email if other folks, or if there are ways I can support you based on capacity, please reach out. Um,
Gabby, are you okay with me putting up the closing slides? You keep talking,
oh
but
yeah, yeah. No, go ahead, go ahead. I'm good.
all right. So, first off, that was incredible. I think for the GMs in the GMs in the room and ex GMs, that was religious. That was amazing. But there's so much good information here, so much more than I knew to expect that it'd be so useful to startup GMs there and boards to their boards. So thank you so,
Mhm.
so much for this, Gabby, and so excited about it. Again, she shared the link if you're a GM and haven't answered it yet. And I just real quickly want to shout out the co-ops that and people who support co-ops that donated to make this series possible, so we don't have to charge anyone money, so we can all learn together for free, and that's their way of contributing to the cooperative movement amongst all the other things they do. And thanks so much to them. Tomorrow is all about business development for you startups. So we're talking about the business concept, which is deciding not just we want to have a grocery store and we want to have these values. Now, how big is it going to be? What kind of products is it going to have? What the heck is the actual concept for the business? Heather Lazikas from Seven Roots and James Morrell from Columinate will be here to explain the business concept 101. What is that? The bridge between your vision and what is actually possible when you want to build a grocery store as a cooperative. And then what to expect for your market study. I think you're really going to, I know not always the most exciting topics in people's minds, but I really love listening to Patrick break down what exactly will and won't your market study be able to tell you. I think you'll find it very useful. And then from vision to viability, I love this. Alana Hines from National Co-op Grocers took the business concept work from the framework and said, we need a tool for that, for how to apply it. And she has built a tool that startups can use to kind of ask themselves questions and develop their business concept. And she's going to walk you through how to use it. So cooperation amongst cooperatives and collaboration amongst cooperators all around the business aspect of developing your food co-op tomorrow. And I hope you all will join us. All right. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, everyone.
I added another resource